Just to let you know, we'll make a start now. We'll probably have a few more people join us, but I'll start off with some introductory comments. But firstly, I'd like to welcome you all for joining us today. We've got people in Australia, but also people dialing in from around the world. So thank you for taking the time to join us. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we are meeting. I would like to pay my respect to the elders past, present and future, and I want to extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people present today. As mentioned earlier, my name is David Lucchetti. I'm the head of the Vaccines Manufacturing Task Force within the Department of Industry. And this department, in conjunction with the Department of Health, is managing this approach to market with this department, the lead agency. The purpose of today's industry briefing is to provide you with background information on the approach to market. We expect the presentation itself that I will give will go between roughly about 30 and 40 minutes, and then we'll have some times for questions at the end of the briefing. We've also taken the opportunity to gather up some of the questions that we've received to date, and we'll, prior to opening it up to questions, we'll actually run through some responses to those questions that have already been received. We do reserve the right to take questions on notice and provide a response in writing after this briefing. We will provide written responses to all questions received at the end of this briefing. To ensure that this presentation runs smoothly, given that we've had close to 100 registrations, we have muted and turned off the video and audio for all participants. So if you do have a question, please use the chat function. For those who are using their phones, that access won't be available to you. But if you do have a question that needs to be asked or that you would like an answer to, I encourage you to write to us at onshore mRNA@industry.gov.au, and we'll address the question then. I now need to just run through some corporate things, given that this is an approach to the market. So firstly, just to make you aware that you shouldn't rely on this briefing for the purposes of preparing, amending or negotiating your responses to the approach to market. Once again, we refer you to the document that spells all this out. Nothing in this industry briefing should be seen as alternating the approach to market unless the department confirms this in writing, as published as a frequently asked question on its website. The department will confirm relevant information in writing as a frequently asked question published on its website. You may only rely on information provided on the department's website in regard to those addendas. Please do not offer gifts or hospitality during the approach to market process. Attempt to receive improper assistance from existing or former employees of the department or other Commonwealth personnel or entities, or otherwise act in an unethical or improper manner. Just so that you're all aware, this industry briefing will be recorded and uploaded to the department's website shortly after its completion. So we ask that you not electronically record this briefing. You will see this mentioned in the approach to market and through this presentation, but we have a single point of contact, being the email described in the approach to market. Once again, onshore mRNA@industry.gov.au. And so we ask you to direct your communications to that email only, and not to approach departmental officers with questions or to seek to engage in side conversations. But as always, with any approach to our email address, we will gather those up. In some cases, we may not necessarily answer a specific question because in some cases we get very similar questions asked of us, and rather than address each one individually, we will bundle some of those up and then provide a response that addresses the issue raised. Okay, so I'll move on to the presentation itself now. You'll see that there's quite a bit of information in the slides itself. The reason for that is because there may be people that reference this later on rather than me necessarily freewheel through a presentation. We want to ensure that this is scripted so that everybody has the benefit of receiving the same information. I'll just move on to the next slide. So you'll see that we'll talk about the background and objectives of this approach to market. We'll then move on to talking about onshoring requirements, proposal requirements, and then I'll move into questions and answers at the end. Once again, just a reminder, if you do have a question, feel free at any time to send it through the chat function. I have some support here with me that'll cover manage those at the end, and we'll seek to address as many as we can in the time allowed. Okay, so to move on, just to provide a bit of context around why the Commonwealth is launching the approach to market, which is obviously to focus on establishing an onshore mRNA vaccine manufacturing capability. So the context is that the Australian government has made substantial investments to support early access to safe and effective vaccines for all Australians. A previous audit that was undertaken in August of last year revealed that we have a capability in this space, and then a follow-up business case undertaken early this year identified that we have in Australia future potential and flexibility in supporting an mRNA platform. In this context, the recent federal budget announced funding to both the Industry Department and the Department of Health to support the establishment of onshore mRNA vaccine manufacturing capability in Australia. And that has led itself to the approach to market. So building on the previous work, we have provided an additional competitive process for industry to put forward solutions to establish onshore and population scale mRNA manufacturing capability within a 1 to 3 year period. And we inform and elicit the development of such, and we're using this approach to market to inform and elicit the development of such proposals that allow consideration by the Commonwealth to involve, support or assist decision making and potential investment in this capability. Proposals will be considered by the Australian government, and the government may also engage expert advisory bodies or expert consultants to provide advice and to assist in this process. So the ATM has 3 key policy objectives. The first is to ensure priority access to and reliable delivery of safe and effective mRNA vaccines and therapeutics to the Australian population as soon as they are available and on an ongoing basis. Second objective is to provide security of vaccine supply to address pandemics and other health emergencies into the future. And the final one is to strengthen Australia's biopharmaceutical sector, including through enabling potential translation and commercialisation paths for Australian-based research and development. Okay, so just to provide a bit of a timeline, as you all would be aware, we launched the approach to market on the 21st of May, last Friday, and we've identified that it will be open for an 8-week period. Just running through this graphic, so today we're on the 27th, hosting an industry briefing, and we will be taking questions throughout this period up until the 9th of July. And what we expect to do as we receive questions, we will be frequently providing responses to those questions on our website. So we encourage people to regularly consult the website to see where updates are and you know, to take advantage of the additional information that we may be in a position to provide. As you're aware, the approach to market will close on the 16th of July, 8 weeks after it was launched, and we've allowed within a week, and there's no guarantee that we will follow up on this, but we're expecting that if there are requests for clarification on the proposals that we receive, then we will send those to relevant respondents. As I said, we may not need to follow up on this, but it's provisioned for in the instance that we may need it. If you do receive a request for additional information on the 23rd, then we're requesting those clarifications by the 28th of July. Okay. So to move on and talk a little bit more about the approach to market and it's the fact that it's complementary to other ongoing efforts that the government is undertaking. So firstly, the government, through the parallel discussions with existing manufacturers, as outlined in the 2021 budget measure titled COVID-19 Vaccine Manufacturing Capabilities. So the government announced that there were ongoing discussions with existing manufacturers. So the approach to market is complementary to those discussions. And there may be other discussions that the government chooses to pursue in relation to this activity. The second part is that this approach to market provides an additional competitive process. So proposals from the approach to market will be considered alongside the outcomes of the discussions with mRNA vaccine IP owners. And what we're expecting is that the government will bring those two pieces of work together and consider the possibilities and then make decisions accordingly. I should also mention that this opportunity is not restricted to Australian manufacturers only, but provides an opportunity for Australian manufacturers to propose solutions and will ultimately help us secure the best mRNA capability for Australians. And by this, it creates the opportunity for you, the Australian manufacturers or potential people that are overseas based, to partner together to provide those solutions. But it's important to note that this process, there is no guarantee that it will result in any grant procurement activity or financial support. That is a matter for government. The other thing I should reference is the medical products roadmap, which is part of the Modern Manufacturing Initiative. Obviously, these are two parallel processes again. So it's therefore possible to submit a proposal through the approach to market and also seek or receive funds under the Modern Manufacturing Initiative. But however, the government does not intend to fund the same project activities under both the Modern Manufacturing Initiative and any support arrangements following the approach to market. Okay, so just to spend a bit of time talking about the role of the Australian government. So firstly, obviously, having released the approach to market, our primary role is to consider proposals to establish this onshore capability, and we will do that through the use of existing information and expert advice. And I mentioned earlier that we have a number of potential expert advisory bodies or consultants that we will engage as part of this process. Other aspects is that we consider whether and how to provide any associated Australian government involvement, support or assistance. So that will be at the discretion of the government, and the government will also provide information and respond to questions from potential proponents. Obviously, that's constrained to where we're able to and where it is appropriate for us to do so. At our discretion, the Australian government may also consider proposals received outside of this approach to market process. We may, at our discretion, share, discuss and negotiate proposals with state and territory governments at any stage of this process or any subsequent process. And then, as mentioned earlier, we have at our discretion the ability to seek further information or or seek clarification from respondents. Now, as potential proponents, we're obviously looking for you to develop and submit proposals in line with the approach to market requirements, including bearing your own costs in doing so. We're looking to you to form relationships for any relevant consortium proposal, and that does include in regard to accessing intellectual property. We're looking for you as proponents to seek any relevant state or territory government support, and obviously articulating that in this proposal. And we're also looking for you to identify and articulate the necessary support from the Australian government that you will be looking for in establishing this proposed capability. So just to move on to the onshoring requirements. So there's a number to run through, but we're looking for you to address product manufacturing and sustainability factors, and they touch on a range of things here. So we're looking for suitable product portfolio and IP arrangements, and by that we mean access or ability to develop necessary IP and know-how required to manufacture COVID-19 vaccines, seasonal influenza vaccines, other mRNA products. And so this could be for other infectious disease threats and applications beyond infectious diseases. And so that could also include other kinds of vaccines also and therapeutic products. We're looking for you to provide information in regard to your manufacturing capabilities and capacity. We are looking for this to be done in such a way that you can demonstrate that you're able to establish population scale end-to-end manufacturing capability in a 1 to 3 year time frame. And that will consider obviously the sites and the facilities. It'll secure a procurement of input materials and equipment, process establishment, workforce needs as it relates to skills, etc., and regulatory compliance. Now, you will note in the documentation we've flagged that some people are of the view and have suggested that they're able to provide that capability within a 12-month period. If that's the case, then by all means feel free to do that. And then the final factors that we're looking for information on is in regard to sustainability, security, flexibility, and synergy. And this relates to the cross-cutting need to ensure onshore manufacturing solution that delivers sustainable and secure vaccine supply for a minimum of 10-year time, 10-year time frame. And so this very much goes to the sustainable nature of the undertaking. We're looking for flexible mRNA platform to support pandemic preparedness needs. And so we're not necessarily, while we're interested in this pandemic, we're also interested in future pandemics and other activities. And then we're also looking to understand your ability to support the local R&D ecosystem as it relates to mRNA. Okay, so proposals should onshore critical mRNA platform manufacturing capabilities to support pandemic preparedness. And this goes to a number of factors. So, what is your end-to-end capability? So the end-to-end capability refers to all the elements needed to establish and deliver an onshore population scale mRNA manufacturing capabilities. Excuse me. This includes acquisition or ownership of necessary IP, and key mRNA manufacturing steps to onshore include mRNA drug substance production via mRNA in vitro transcription, mRNA drug substance formulation, for example, lipid nanoparticle formulation, sterile fill and finish of the drug product. So, we're looking for a consortia that can submit a single proposal outlining how it aims to establish this end-to-end capability. And when we're talking about flexibility, what is required in regard to that. So what we're looking for is a platform flexibility that supports future pandemic preparedness. And that goes to being able to respond to changing demands and priorities in this context of future pandemics or health emergencies. This includes the ability to rapidly switch and scale up production of any mRNA products as required within reasonable constraints. And it also requires support for the technological advancement, innovation in the mRNA technology platform as new technologies arise. So onshore mRNA vaccine manufacturing should commence at population scale within a 1 to 3 year timeframe, which I referenced earlier. What do we mean by population scale? Well, it refers to sufficient capacity to provide timely supply of vaccines in a pandemic health emergency context to fully vaccinate the entire Australian population. We're also looking for you to provide a buffer to account for both population growth, allow for parallel production of, and allow for the ongoing production of any other mRNA products that may continue to be required during a pandemic. And just to give you an example, this may require a dose production capacity of 100 million doses on an annualized basis. And what kind of time frame are we looking for this? So we're looking for you to stand up this population scale end-to-end mRNA vaccine manufacturing capability within a 12 months or earlier if possible, as I mentioned, and no later than 3 years from finalisation of an agreement with the Australian government. We're also looking for you to continue operation of a commercially sustainable facility for a minimum time frame of 10 years once that capability is established. Okay, so just to move on to proposal requirements. So this will probably be reasonably standard from proposals to proposals that you may have participated in previously, but what we're looking for is obviously a cover sheet. So we're looking for particulars on responded entities. So this includes contact details and relevant declarations. The cover sheet also seeks an executive summary of your proposal and an outline navigation aid on how the main body of the proposal addresses the various requirements. From a profile point of view, we're looking for information on you as the respondent, including financial performance, manufacturing footprint, workforce, R&D investments, relevant IP arrangements and partnerships. In regard to the response to the statement of requirement, we're looking for information on how the requirements will be addressed, including product pipeline and IP arrangements, manufacturing capability and capacity, platform flexibility, timeline to operations, supply chain resilience, and material risks. And finally, in regard to costing information, we're looking for full costings for establishing and operating the capability, including any government support requirements. And that could be anything from an upfront capital injection to support capital construction costs and or offtake arrangements that your proposal may seek. So, there is flexibility around that. We don't have a preferred approach. We're looking for you to articulate that to us. Okay, so just to provide a little bit more information, submissions can involve multiple stakeholders. And we obviously would welcome, proposals from consortia or joint partners. They need to involve a modular or multi-partner approach to delivering the end-to-end capability. Obviously, we're looking for a consortium to submit a single proposal. And from a government perspective, our intent is to enter into an arrangement with a single legal entity to establish this capability. Proposals, therefore, should detail the legal entity, consortium members, and any subcontractors. Individual entities, companies may be part of multiple proposals consortia. In developing proposals, state territory governments can be engaged. Respondents may engage with state and territory governments to develop their proposals to provide maximum value for Australia, but this is not a mandatory requirement. If respondents anticipate a role for state or territory governments in their proposal for onshore mRNA manufacturing capability, the Australian government's preference is for this engagement to occur prior to proposal lodgement. And details of any state territory government support should be included in the proposal. Okay, so just in regard to cost estimates, we'd like to provide a clarification in regard to contingency costs. So proposals should also provide estimated contingency costs. By contingency costs, they could cover or relate to establishment costs, operational costs, or additional ad hoc costs, and should be separately listed in proposals. Separate listing will facilitate an apples-to-apples comparison across proposals, preventing apparently inflated estimates where some proposals bake in contingencies while others do not. Where possible, major assumptions should also be identified in the commentary, and that's just so that we understand the reasons for those contingency requirements. There are two ways that proposals can provide the estimated contingency costs. So you can do it at the line level with figures listed separately line by line in the 3 cost templates. Government may sum these line level costs to a total expected contingency cost for the relevant cost type. That is, add the columns to the costing template tables. The other option is to aggregate your contingency costs. And so this would result in it being included as a separate dedicated single line item in each of the 3 cost templates. If it is not possible to break down contingency costs to an appropriate level of detail, that is, add a separate row to each of the costing template tables. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the presentation. But what I will do, and I'll leave up just as I start to go through the various questions and answers that we've received, the various questions we've received to date, but I'll also leave on the screen there our contact details in the department. We've listed the phone number there. I've just realised though that we've asked you not to contact us. So once again, I just direct people to sending an email to onshore.mRNA@industry.gov.au. Okay, so as mentioned at the beginning, we have received a number of questions to date. We will provide, I'll read through those questions and answers now. In some cases, we have bundled those up just so that we can provide an answer that should address all the questions that have been asked. But we will also put these questions and answers on our website too. So the first question, and this is in no particular order of importance, this really is just how they've come to us. So the first question relates to skills. So essentially the question was sourcing the right expertise to run this facility when there is a skill shortage. There could be a challenge in the need to hire competent staff. How is that going to be addressed? And so our answer is, it is up to the respondent to explain how they propose to provide the mRNA capability, including any constraints, such as the necessary skills and expertise that it may face and how it proposes to deal with those constraints. The second question is around sovereign real estate. And the question is, could sovereign real estate be considered as part of the solution for facilities if needed? And the answer is yes. Fully costed proposals responding to the statement of requirements in the approach to market do not have any constraints in regard to site ownership. So once again, obviously we're looking for you to explain how that can be achieved and what needs to be done. Question 3, relating to ownership. For capabilities that might be entirely funded by the Commonwealth, how would this be treated from an ownership perspective? And our answer is the exact arrangement for each capability will be treated differently. A common approach or position on ownership is not able to be established at this stage. The approach to ownership will be considered in relation to each proposal and may be subject to further negotiation. It may be it may be useful for respondents to propose a fully costed position or alternative positions in their proposals and provide a rationale for the proposed approach or approaches. The next question relates to tech transfer. How would the tech transfer be handled between Moderna, the government and the manufacturer? So firstly, our response goes to, this is not a discussion about Moderna. This is about your proposal, and it's about your ability to secure a relationship with an IP owner. It may not necessarily be Moderna products that we're talking about. There are potentially other sources out there. So to deal with the question more in the generality, we want to hear from you on where you will source the intellectual property. If you need intellectual property, we suggest that you commence those discussions. Each respondent is required to propose suitable intellectual property arrangement. It is anticipated that in order to submit a fully costed proposal, that it is truly end-to-end. And so industry may also submit a proposal as part of a consortium. This may include sourcing a fully costed technology transfer from an mRNA intellectual property owner, which the government does not intend to mediate. So just to emphasise, we're expecting you to drive those discussions with the IP owners. Follow-up question is in regard to the cost of tech transfer. Who will be absorbing the cost of the licence from Moderna? Once again, I say it's not necessarily Moderna who we are talking about, but really this is a matter for you to tell us. We do not have a prescribed position in regard to this. Cost arrangements are to be specified in the proposal. So we would expect that you would be able to explain to us, the investment support or assistance that you're looking for the Australian government to provide in order to establish this capability. And that may include, if you so choose, seeking support to recover the full costs of technology transfer. Another question related to reimbursement. So assuming the government picks up the cost of the licence, would it be stipulating the price it will be reimbursing the manufacturer per dose? And our response, the proposal should clearly specify the intellectual property requirements as set out in the Statement of Requirements. The Australian government is seeking fully costed proposals to establish an onshore population scale mRNA manufacturing capability. If investment support or assistance from the government is identified in the proposal as necessary to establish the capability, then once again, the respondent needs to identify this and specify those associated costs. Number of grant recipients. How many companies will be able to get any amount of grant? As the government is yet to make a decision on the process or how we will determine the way forward in regard to this, because we're waiting on the proposals to come in. There are no limits on the number of entities that may ultimately receive investment support or assistance from the government as a result of this approach to market. The approach to market is intended to inform and elicit the development of fully costed proposals with sufficient detail to allow for consideration by the Commonwealth Government to once again involve, support or assist decision-making and potential investment as detailed in the approach to market. The decisions by the Commonwealth Government may result in a procurement grant or other form of involvement, support or assistance, or a combination of these arrangements. In all cases with a binding commitment required to maintain the capability and to make products available to the Australian Government. However, as set out in the approach to market, there is no guarantee that this process will result in the Commonwealth undertaking any grant procurement activity or other financial support from the Commonwealth for any proposal or that involves any respondent to this approach to market. And finally, the Australian Government may not undertake any open procurement or grant process following this approach to market. It may seek to enter into arrangements directly with one or more respondents to this approach to market or with any other entity, including any existing mRNA vaccine IP holder. Another question around grant amounts. What are the price ranges of the grants? Once again, there are no set price ranges for investment support or assistance required to establish this capability. Once again, it's for you to tell us. This approach to market is designed to understand the full cost of support that industry needs in order to establish this capability. And respondents are expected to identify in their proposals fully costed details of investment support or assistance from the Australian Government that may be necessary to establish this capability, as set out in the approach to market. Moving on to another question about TGA certification. Does the manufacturing facility need to be TGA certified? How about US FDA? Yes, the manufacturing capability needs to be certified for relevant markets. One of the requirements included in the approach to market is the ability to engage relevant regulatory bodies to acquire necessary site and product regulatory approvals to support mRNA manufacturing. A further question about the expected timeline. By which date do you expect the site to be fully operational realistically? We have set out in the approach to market that our expectation is that the capability will be fully operational with requisite regulatory approvals, licenses, within a time frame of between 12 months or earlier if possible, and no later than 3 years from finalisation of an agreement with the Australian Government. Just a few more questions to go. Next steps. After receiving proposals from the market, what will be the next steps and foreseeable timeframes? So once again, 16th of July is when the approach to market closes. We will move very quickly to undertake the assessment required and to provide advice to government. And from there, it becomes a matter for the government to make a decision as to how it will choose to proceed. And I think I'll draw the questions closed there. There may be some others online. We only apparently have one online, so I might just hand over to my colleague to ask a question and I'll provide the response.
Thanks, David. So we've had a question from the audience that there is a requirement for the facility to have requisite approvals and licenses in no later than 3 years. Can you clarify if this is for a facility, is a facility GMP license or a registered product approval?
So thank you. So not entirely sure about that question. Look, I think it goes back to the early response. I think you have to have all necessary approvals. It's difficult to comment in the generality, but you need to have all necessary approvals in order to be able to supply the Australian Government with the vaccines and other products, you know, as agreed or as outlined in your proposal. And one more question too, so I'll just go.
And another question in, how progressed are the discussions between the Australian Government and CSL?
Thank you. Look, the government is talking to a whole range of players in regard to not only potentially this activity, but a range of activities that relate to vaccine manufacturing. And we have been for a number of months as we've worked this proposal up. So from our perspective, you know, we can't say any more about the discussions that we've had with CSL or any other company as they are in confidence discussions. Okay, so that seems to be the end of the questions. I might just give it 30 more seconds if there's any last minute requests or questions. But while we do that, I'll just remind people, if you do have a question, if as you've reflected on the presentation, if you do have a desire to send in a supplementary question, then please do so via our onshore mRNA email address. But we do have one more, so.
Thanks, David. Last one. How should the proposals demonstrate engagement with the local RNA and R&D sector, academic and possible companies?
Once again, thank you. Once again, I think that's a matter for the proponents to contact the R&D sector. I think it's reasonably well known from those within the community where that research capability lies, and that there are other groups, etc., that work in this space. So our encouragement would be that you make contact with them. And once again, it depends on your proposal and what you're looking for. So the terms of those discussions are best settled between yourself and those. And in some cases, we would believe that some people would make approaches to a broader cross section of the community. Others might localise it to their immediate region. They're all very much options and opportunities for you to consider as individual proponents. Okay, we don't have any more questions. So once again, look, I'd like to just, in closing, thank everybody for their participation. Once again, to confirm that we will put the presentation up on the website reasonably shortly. I think at least within a couple of hours we're looking at. The 3 questions that we received today, we will provide responses to those and add those to the ones that we have received currently, and we will update the website to reflect those. That may take a little bit longer than the uploading of the presentation. So be prepared to see the presentation first and then see the questions and answers. Well, at least the ones that have been asked today in the chat, see them possibly early next week, I would expect. But we will put the others up that I've read through at the same time. Okay, well, everyone, I want to thank you for your time. Hopefully this has been helpful. And if you need anything else, please contact us by our onshore mRNA email address. Thank you.